Brilliant culture. Let's talk about this, because we sometimes talk about culture as if culture was not, it didn't have any people in it, right? Doesn't have any
Exactly.
people in it. That's like talking about a garden that doesn't have any plants in it,
Mhm.
right? I mean, it's the same analogy. But at the same time, we forget that we're not just individuals, we're a group, we're a team. So, what is it that you're now looking at that helps us better understand this idea of team?
We're really looking at, like you were saying, sometimes we talk about culture like there are no people in it. And to me, it's sometimes we talk about organizations like there are no people in it, as though we have an organization and we have people inside when there is no organization without people. And the same with culture. If you don't have people around, you don't actually have a culture because the people themselves have formed the culture. So what I think of teams as really the engine of an organization and the engine of a culture, because especially now with our global economy and our global workforce, we see that people are being asked to team all the time. In fact, we have a new verb called teaming. It's a verb, it's teaming is considered an actual verb now. And I would say that's new in the last few years. So, and that has to do with people. Used to be that teams were static. People would form and they might be in the same team for maybe years. And now people might come together for 3 months. They might come together for 3 weeks in order to get a project done, start an initiative, and that team may disband, never to come together again, and they form a new team. So it is really a new way of working within organizations.
You know what I'm really struck by about this is that every year we go through this thing in sports. And what happens is we go through sports drafts, we go through changes in team, we get to go through changes in coaches, but nobody ever says, wait a minute, we're changing the quarterback. Oh, let's expect to lose. Do you know what I'm trying to say? We don't have that, but yet in organizations, we think we have to compromise whenever we're talking about building teams, rebuilding teams, project teams. How do you help change that mindset?
It's real, it is a mindset issue. That's exactly the perfect word for it, because people have to actually start thinking about how they work differently. That's the mindset change. That I might not work with all the same people, and really they have to learn how to trust and connect with people much more quickly. As humans, and this of course varies person to person, but it might take us a while to trust people. We may not want to connect with people we don't know. We may want to stick with the people we do know. And in order to work effectively in teams, and the mindset really is we have to learn to trust each other and connect with each other pretty quickly, or we're not going to be very effective in getting our work done. And the upside of that is you'll get to know a whole lot of people. You'll gain some new skills, and you can do a lot of interesting projects. And the downside is that teams that have to come together and get things done, and they don't spend any time on trust or communication, really aren't going to do particularly well.
What are other people saying as you're out in the world now saying, hey, wait a minute, I'm looking at this from a cultural brilliance point of view. How are people talking with you about it?
People are really interested in, I think they're focusing less on the brilliance part of it because it's a really new way of looking at it.
Yeah.
But they like the idea of the authenticity, and they like the idea that we're going to tell the truth. We may not be using quite that word, but we're going to tell the truth. We're going to talk about what's really going on. They are agreeing that a lot of organizations don't understand their cultures, and there's a lot of research and surveys that have been done to substantiate that. So there's a lot of agreement around it. Like, this is actually a really interesting idea. I think people are really hungry for a different way to handle culture and to start to decrease their stress levels within their organizations, because all the old organizational models, as we know, don't work, and it really ramps up the stress level.
I got to ask you about this, because part of this is when you're bringing teams that are rapidly changing, right? And I think, it is the difference between having a sports team that gets together year after year and then putting a team together for the Olympics, right?
Yeah.
Right. So don't we have to learn a whole new idea about what this comes to mean? So what is it that you are talking to people about that they can learn? What are some of the most important things that they might have to learn that they didn't have to learn before?
One of the big things, and there's a lot of new research and books
Mhm.
being written about this, is this idea of psychological safety.
Mm.
One of the books by Amy Edmondson, who's a professor and researcher at Harvard, talks a lot about this. There's a book in the last couple of years called The Everyone Culture that talks about this idea of well-held vulnerability, which is very similar. And that is something in organizations, at least the ones I've been in, we have not talked much about. And if we've talked about it, we certainly haven't enacted it very well.
Mhm.
And so that's a big deal, and it's really a key component. Like, organizations have to have some psychological safety intact so that people can trust each other quickly. They can be innovative and creative because they can make mistakes. And that's not a new idea, but I think what we're actually starting to see now is the fact that some organizations are saying, we can't just keep talking about it. We can't just keep researching it. We can't just keep writing books about it. We've got to actually do it and figure out a way to do it.